When I was doing research for my book, 7 Questions to Answer Before You Retire, I came across the writing of an American gerontologist called Robert Atchley. He's devised 6 phases of retirement, which I find rather pertinent. The first is what he calls pre-retirement. That's the phase when you're still working, you're massing together how much money you're going to have in retirement, sort of working out how the lay of the land is, you're planning, you're getting ready, and for many people, you're working really hard because you're handing over to someone who's going to take over from you. Then comes retirement day, and for some, this is a rude awakening because you leave work on a Friday evening and you never go back. And Monday morning dawns and there is this empty, gaping hole ahead of you. And in that phase, he says there are 3 different reactions. One is you opt to go on holiday, you go on honeymoon. You, pre-COVID, when the world was prior to the new normal, people would go on cruises, go on round the world trips, have just a general break with the work routine, maybe tick some things off their bucket list. Another reaction is those who just want to simply relax. It may involve pottering around the home, reorganizing some things that you've had piling up for years and you've never had the time to do it, like reorganizing the garden shed, doing a decluttering, throwing things out, getting ready for your retirement at home, but gently, and getting a lot of relaxation in between. The third is if you have prepared adequately, you may just simply slot into your new way of living in retirement, whether that's working part-time or whatever for the options that I mentioned in my previous video. The third phase he mentioned is one called disenchantment. And for some, this may be very fleeting. I remember I had it. I woke up and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting old. I'm retired. And I moved on. But for some, perhaps those who've not prepared adequately, that feeling of not being needed, boredom, frustration, because they don't know what to do with themselves, feeling irrelevant, feeling they don't fit anywhere, they don't belong anywhere. This stage of enchantment can be big. It can go on for a long time, and if left neglected, can spiral into depression. I read an article last week about the spiraling rates of depression, and I will talk about that in another video coming up. So the stage of disenchantment, we all react to that differently. The fourth stage he mentions is the stage of reorientation, when we come out of that disenchantment and we start reorganizing our lives and setting up new routines, some cases making new friendships, finding new activities, and balancing our days in different ways. And that all leads us into our retirement routine. So if that's work, if it's part-time work, if it's volunteering, or if it's playing golf and meeting socially, etc., gardening, developing the garden, whatever, we find that retirement routine, which actually calls phase 5. And then finally, we move on in stage 6 to what he calls the termination of retirement. And this is when we reach what is commonly known as the Zimmer frame age, where we become genuinely elderly. We may become more frail for some, and it's becoming a big reality. Our minds might start to fail. We may need carers. We will need to move into accommodation that is more elderly friendly. And so that is moving on and the termination of retirement. So he outlines the period of retirement as from when we move from full-time employment through various phases of setting up a routine in so-called retirement, and then moving on to the phase of old age. For me, I found that very interesting. As a life coach and previously an occupational therapist who worked in the psychiatric wards, I find the period of disenchantment the one most worrisome, because if people get caught in that, it can lead to not very pleasant consequences. But as I said, I will chat more about that in a previous video because it can be averted.